Hello, welcome to the Capital Games Podcast. I am the Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
Zero. Merry Christmas, my friend. How was your holiday?
It was all right. A little weird on one side of my family, and then just great with the other side of my family. But it was pretty much what I expected it to be.
Yeah, that's nice. I don't know why, but it just seemed like another day for me. I mean, all of my family was sick, so I was like the only one who wasn't. But yeah, nothing really happened on my end, which in its way is nice. So, what can you do on that one? But it being the holidays and all, and we talk about games, usually that means there is a bunch of sales going on, and one of them is, of course, the Steam Winter Sale. And we thought what would be a good idea is to steer you guys into the right direction on where to spend your now earned money from what you got in the holidays. So, Zero, why don't you start? What do you think are some good deals on the Steam Winter Sale?
Grand Blue Versus is a great one if you want a fighting game with some cool anime aesthetics. The only downside is the online net play is terrible because they haven't updated it to rollback. But unfortunately, that's due to Cygames not wanting to put in the extra money for Arc System Works to give the game some rollback. The base game itself is $8, but if you want the Legendary Edition, which has all the season passes up to current, it's 35% off for a price of $32.99, which is a really freaking good deal.
That is a good deal. You have this on PC?
PS5, actually.
Okay. All right. I know that the PS4 version was put on the PS Plus for 1 month, so I think I might have that. But that is a decent deal, even if you don't want the DLC. $8 for what I've heard is actually a pretty good fighting game is not a bad deal. I would think. I think the one game right now that I would choose is Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana. It usually is $40. It's on sale for $18. This is a really good game. I'm surprised it's that cheap because a lot of the Nihon Falcom games don't really drop in price that far. And this one, they dropped 55% off. I think 9 is still pretty pricey. 9 is still $42, but 8 was actually really good. Story is fun, but it's the combat that I thought was really good in this. So if you like that type of game, I would say Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana for $18 is a very good deal.
Another fighting game that's a little bit more on the Indian niche side that I would probably recommend for anyone who was a big fan of Psychic Force on the original PlayStation is Senko no Ronde 2. It is a whopping 75% off, so for $10 for the game. And then if you want the complete bundle that has all the DLC, I think it's just a grand total of $13, and you get the DLC. The DLC is just literally 2 pieces. One of them is for a character called Rounder Vulcan, and then the other character is a virtual on suit. So, yeah, just if you kind of like something that's like Psychic Force, that's like a mix of bullet hell meets a fighting game, then yeah, $13 for the entire collection is a really good deal.
Yes, Senko no Ronde is it was released on the 360 as Wartech, if I recall correctly. Am I right on that?
Oh, it's been
okay.
years. I would have to double check myself.
Okay, but these are really, again, it's a strange fighting game, but it's actually, you're right, it's actually a very fun game. I would definitely recommend it. Another RPG of sorts. I have this on the Switch, but I can easily recommend this on PC, and it's Monster Hunter Rise and Sunbreak. Monster Hunter Rise, the base game is $20, but with Sunbreak, it's $39.89. From a price of $69.99 usually. If you were a fan of Monster Hunter World, I'm gonna guess you might have already bought it, But if you haven't at this point, I think now is the time to do that. And I think they're still updating the game as we speak. So Monster Hunter Rise is definitely something that I would recommend picking up.
For anyone who's been waiting for a sale for Elden Ring, it's on sale now, and since it's a FromSoft game, there's typically not sales on it very often. It's on sale for $42, so if you've been hemming and hawing and waiting for it to go on sale, now's the time to buy.
You played Darktide and you talked about last week, and I want to just point out that if you want a game, if you saw that game and you were interested in it, but you heard that the net play and the issues are still there, and you want to wait, if you haven't gotten this yet, Vermintide 2 is $6. With all of the DLC, it's $44.70. But if you just want the base game to play, it's $6. I can say as well as you can that Vermintide 2 is a lot of fun. It is I would say a more melee-focused Left 4 Dead with some RPG mechanics is how what I would call it at this point. But yeah, if you saw Darktide and you said that looks interesting, but you heard the technical problems, you didn't buy it, I'd say give Vermintide 2 a shot.
For anyone who is a big Resident Evil fan and hasn't played Village, Village Gold Edition is on sale for $40, which is 20% off of the normal price of $50. Yeah, it includes the base game, almost all of the DLC from the launch of the game, and then also it includes the Winters expansion, which also adds the third-person camera mode and some of the other stuff. But yeah, that's an excellent deal at $40. And I say this as a person who bought a hard copy of Village on my Xbox Series X, and then I paid full price for both the Trauma Pack DLC and then also the Winters expansion DLC as well too.
Okay, nice. I guess my final recommendation, if you were interested in Pokemon or you got Pokemon and you were disappointed by it and you really want to scratch that Pokemon itch, I originally would have said Temtem, but I fell off of that pretty quick. But what I really got into is this Pokemon / Metroidvania game called Monster Sanctuary. I played it for the podcast, for video on the podcast about a month or two ago, and had a blast playing it. It's $7 right now on sale. It's usually $20. But if that blend of gameplay interests you, I would say pick this up right away. It's a lot of fun. And the combat in the game is also really good as well, and the leveling is very rewarding. So I'd say for $7, Monster Sanctuary, I think is a great deal.
It isn't on sale for a major discount, but I think it's worth mentioning mostly because it is a very, very solid game. Ast Libra Revision, it is on sale for just 10% off, but it's priced at $22.49. It is an indie Japanese game that it feels like Final Fantasy 1 mixed with like a combo-focused action RPG for the combat systems and mechanics. And I believe the developer worked on it by himself for nearly 15 years. But the game just feels so mechanically good and solid. Yeah, there's some kind of esoteric puzzle solving that you kind of have to figure out yourself, or jump to a Japanese wiki and use Google Translate on it. But overall, I think it's a great game if you're kind of into sort of like an old-fashioned feeling action RPG. Oh. So yeah, just $22.49. It's not break the bank expensive, but I think it's something to look into. Also, honorable mention, because one of my close friends just gifted me a copy of this tonight. If you're into big, major space simulation sorts of games and just like the idea of politics, trading, and Intergalactic Piracy, the X4 collection with all of the current DLC is $40.
Yeah, it might be a little above my, I guess, mental pay grade, I guess to call it, but it's definitely, from what I watched him play it, it looks really interesting. And I guess one thing that I could point out too, if you're into 4X games, because isn't that considered a 4X game or not?
Yeah, I would believe so.
Okay. Stellaris. You can get Stellaris either the basic edition for $10 or the Galaxy edition. I'm not sure what that entails, but that's $13. And then if you want all the DLC, because there's a lot of DLC for this game, they added on a bunch. They have a starter pack for $35.95, and then all the DLC for I would say a beefy sum. I got a bunch of the DLC already, so I'm not going to have the right price on there. But it usually runs for about $135. But yeah, if you want 4X games, Stellaris is actually a really good game. So yeah, a lot of big sales and big discounts that are on the Steam sale. I would also recommend that if there's something that you wanted to get on sale but is not on sale or you don't like the price, check sites like Fanatical and Humble Bundle, and often they will have the prices a little bit cheaper, but be wary because once you buy it and you put it on Steam, you can't refund it. So I would recommend that if you are interested in something and you're not quite sure about it, maybe buy it on Steam, refund it, and then buy it on one of those other sites. Don't tell them I said so, but, that's an option. But yeah, lots of good games to look over and to get in the Steam sale. Let's get on to the topics, and of course, it is almost the end of the year, so we're going to do our year review wheel once again. So we are going to spin the wheel to see what we're going to cover today. Now, you might have noticed, if you looked at the other episodes, that the wheel has kind of pared down. We decided that maybe some topics are not beefy enough to discuss, so we pared it down to a certain extent. So we have 6 to go, and I think we're going to do a few today. So, Zero, are you ready to spin that wheel?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it! I didn't come up with any other music, so this is going to be quite silent. Here we go. Stadia. Yeah. Stadia had a rocky year this year. Right off the gate, in the beginning of 2022, there were rumors that the Stadia service was shutting down, or that they were canceling the service altogether. Social media accounts and PR for Google and Stadia vehemently denied it. They said that no, we are still developing games, even though they shut down a bunch of studios, and that they are continuing the service as is for the time being. And then in August, I believe, they announced that they, in a blog post by Phil Harrison, that they are sunsetting the service as of January of next year. Zero, you want to comment on the whole timeline when it comes to Stadia?
It was actually just completely wild because I believe we started hearing rumors that the service was probably going to be on its way out as early as February this year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, definitely. And this is not something that was shocking or something that people thought was unbelievable at the time. A lot of people were basically wondering how it was still running. And on top of that as well, a lot of people were also wondering when Google was going to kill this, because Google has a track record of doing a whole bunch of different types of tech, and then when it gets a little rough, just shit canning it entirely. And a lot of people were expecting pretty quickly for Stadia to hit the bucket at some point. I think a lot of people were surprised, including me, that it lasted as long as it did. Because there was a period of time where I had to be reminded that Stadia still existed.
It was just sort of a weird thing, just kind of to see it for most of the year, just kind of existing. And then it wasn't until towards closer to the end of the year, they finally went up and conceded and basically said, yeah, so pulling the plug on the service. Just, yeah, it's got its issues, but what can you do? And that was just kind of it. And
Yeah.
honestly, it just kind of shocked me because I was just like wow, just I didn't realize that they have finally decided to pull the plug on this.
Right, and what surprised me a lot about it, about Stadia being shut down, was not that it was being shut down. I think we all knew it was bound to happen, but that the people who were running Stadia and the people that were developing Stadia and everything were shocked by the announcement. And not just because, like, it's not one of those mean things like you should have known that you had a turd of a product. It was more or less they were given no warning when the announcement was made. Like, they were stunned. In fact, there were some studios and there were still contracts being made to get the games exclusive to Stadia before when that announcement was made. So it was literally, from what the reports were making it sound like, it was literally someone from the top said, it's time to pull the plug, and then they just did it. It wasn't a gradual thing where most companies would announce it internally, give a timeline, and then prepare everybody to then eventually announce it in public, so then everyone's on the same page and prepared to do what needs to be done. It was literally, yeah, we're shutting this down according to X person says we're shutting it down, and everyone learned at the same time, which honestly is a horrible way of doing things, because then you have these employees who are now out there, especially the PR employees and the people who run these social media accounts, who are bombarded with questions about the service where they do not have answers. So it was kind of nuts watching that happen.
I think really just it was really a shame to just see the developers just being completely in the dark about everything, and then the Google reps kind of misdirecting some of these developers, going, "Oh yeah, it's all good, don't worry about it." Just Stadia's still fine, and then just to have the rug pulled out from under him and going, "Oh yeah, so Stadia's dead." So there you go, guys.
Yeah, it was basically, if you want to see like a cold, calculated move done either incompetently or without care. Like, look at what happened with Stadia here, because it really looked like the PR team had no idea what to do. Like, it wasn't like for a day or two that they weren't answering any questions because they needed the information to get out there. It was rough to watch at times. But what led to Stadia essentially going under and having these issues? Stadia started in 2018, 2017? November 2019. Oh, wow. That's a lot later than I thought. So, it came out officially in November 2019. And what I remember distinctly when it was released was basically a meme that was on Twitter. And it was basically a 10-second video of somebody playing Destiny 2 through Stadia on their computer. And all it was a guy pressing the space button, and then 2 seconds their Guardian jumps. And that's all you needed. That is all you needed to kill a service. Because it was the one thing that people were very unsure about when it came to a service that generally is just streaming. And that is, how's the lag and latency? And that showed a lot of people it wasn't great.
And in addition to that point, it was a really big contrast to what Google had shown off at the trade show floors, because at the trade show floors they were just like, look, there's barely any latency.
Right.
But of course, everyone had the bigger question of, okay, you guys are hosting this at a trade show in a convention hall in California, right next to your data centers in California. What's to say that this isn't basically rigged?
Mhm.
And of course, Google's marketing team was just like, no, 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 it's not rigged. It's not rigged. We swear. It's all good. It's all good. And of course, everyone was just kind of like, we really doubt this, because your main servers are in Silicon Valley in California, and we're in a convention hall in California. So there's not going to be much latency because the servers are pretty much proverbially next door. So yeah, just this just seems way too good to be true. And
Right.
of course, just Google kept dismissing it, going, no, 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 it's gonna be cool. We're gonna have nodes all over the U.S. and in countries where we're going to debut Stadia. So it's going to be 100% good. So the experience you have at this convention hall, you're going to have at home. And then, of course, when that meme came out showing that one guy going, yeah, so remember what Stadia said? The experience is going to be exactly like what they showed off on the trade show floor. We're calling bullshit.
You're absolutely right. They tried to pawn it off as something that the experience they got in the trade show is going to be everywhere, and it wasn't true. The other issue is also the business aspect of Stadia, where essentially you don't have a license to play the game. You have to, you have a license to play the game, but since it's all streaming, there's no physical release, so you can't have a disc and play it. But they were the same price as if you were to buy a game on, let's say, on Xbox or on PlayStation. And with it being the same price as well, a lot of people were looking at that and go, well, wait a minute. If it's the same exact price, why would I spend $60 on something that I don't have a hard copy for? That seems really strange. So the business aspect of it was flawed as well with them. They did end up having a subscription service I think it was called Stadia Pro, that would allow you to play those games with a subscription for like $15. But even then, a lot of people weren't exactly thrilled with the business aspects of Stadia.
Yeah, and another sign, in my opinion, that showed that they were struggling to get adoption numbers up for Stadia was, I want to say it was either last year or 2020, where you had providers like Verizon Fios, that if you signed up for a certain level of the Fios service, they would give you a free Stadia pack, which was the controller and a Chromecast 4K, just for free. And then in that kit, you also got I think a 3-month trial of Stadia Premium to boot. And when that started to happen, I was just like, ooh, that doesn't look like a good sign. It looks like basically Google's been sitting on these starter kits going, okay, what the fuck are we going to do with all this inventory? We got to move it. Okay, well, let's partner with an ISP and then just give them away with the ISP to say, hey, look, you can use your new high-speed internet service with Google Stadia, and you get to try the premium service. Isn't that a great thing? And even with that, just some people who got the kits were just like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I've tried the Stadia trial, and it's awful. I don't want any part of this.
Yeah.
So some people had these kits just literally just end up sitting in their house doing nothing.
Yeah. And another thing to point out, too, a way that you could make the service work is exclusive titles. Now, when it came out, I think the biggest exclusive title they had was Orcs Must Die 3. Now, I like Orcs Must Die. It's a fun game, but it's not going to push me to a platform. That was also an interesting wrinkle as well. And this also goes into the business of them trying to find talent. because anecdotal reports were going out from a bunch of journalists who, when talking to people who were on the Stadia team, is that Google really did not play ball with developers. So developers were very shaky on Stadia, and they essentially thought that because they're Google, people will want to work with them. So they didn't work out deals. They didn't give them extra money. They pretty much lowballed anybody who had a passing interest in Stadia to a certain extent, thinking, well, we're Google, you're going to want to work with us. So if you want to be on Stadia and you want to be part of the future, I mean, you're going to have to pay the price. Wasn't one report saying that Kojima wanted to actually do a Stadia game, and Kojima and they lowballed him essentially?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny with the whole mention that Google basically he tried to swagger in like everyone would just die to have an opportunity to work with them, because on one of the episodes of the Jeff Gerstmann show, he actually talked about some of his anonymous developer sources who talked to him, and he was just like, yeah, just Google, apparently from some of my anonymous developer friends who I cannot disclose who they are due to NDAs and stuff. He was just like, yeah, just some of these people were at the Stadia meetings, and Google's basically like, well, everyone's going to be on Stadia. Don't you want to be a part of the next biggest thing? Because if you don't, then and you're going to be left behind, and just kind of swaggering their way through. And of course, a lot of these game developers are like, okay, well, what incentives do you have for us to join you? And Google would just kind of go, what incentives? You don't need incentives. We're fucking Google. You want to work with us. You'll beg to work with us. So, and some developers were just like, you know, as neat as that is, you're not really giving us any compelling reasons to work with you. So some developers just laughed at them so hard, basically going, you guys have no clue on what the hell you're doing.
And it really showed as the 3 years, good Lord, the 3 years passed by. And you'd think during the pandemic that maybe Stadia would have a resurgence when consoles were having a huge resurgence around that time. But no, that didn't happen. And it was basically because of bad word of mouth, a unappealing system that they were having, unappealing business practices, and just an overall sense of directionlessness in the form of Google with Stadia. So it really was not a shock that this service was going down. In fact, I think a lot of people were just counting the days to when it was going to happen. And when the rumors started really churning in like January, February, that it's bound to happen, I think we were just waiting for the timer to go off on that. I will say the one good thing about it being canceled is that Google is refunding everybody who bought kits and games throughout the time that they were playing. So I think the only thing that they are not refunding the subscription service, if I'm correct on that. Correct?
Yeah. If you subscribe to Stadia Premium, then you won't get any of the money back, because that has obviously gone into this to maintain the service. But all game purchases will be refunded, and any developers that have chosen to or have been able to are providing people with ways to export their saves to take them onto other platforms or other services and stuff like that. I think Destiny has something in the works right now.
Well, Destiny's always had the what do you call it, the cross progression thing. So I think the one that got some reporting and some traction was Red Dead Redemption 2, because there was that person who was playing Stadia and had 700 hours on Red Dead Online, and suddenly his stuff is going to go kaput when that time comes. And I haven't heard much else after that, to be absolutely honest.
Yeah, I think some of the Ubisoft games, like one of the Assassin's Creeds, um, is getting a method to migrate your save off of Stadia,
Okay.
and then you can import it to like a PC version or something. But yeah, just I think Destiny with the Stadia version did not officially have the ability to port your save around. So unfortunately, I imagine Bungie has had been scrambling to get that done for Stadia users, just to make sure that Stadia users can just export their save data and just go to whichever platform they prefer.
Yeah, and again, developers did not know about this until the announcement happened. So they were scrambling too on this. I guess the only thing Stadia and Google did right is refund their purchases when they announced that they're getting rid of the system or the service, because a lot of us, and I will freely admit this, a lot of us thought when they would shut this down that people were just screwed. Like, I did not think Google was going to turn around and say, okay, we'll refund everything. I thought they were going to say, well, you paid for the license. I mean, yeah, you have no access to it, but it's a service, so bye. And that was it. I think it's good on them to actually refund those purchases. But then again, they are Google. They are worth billions at this point. So I think it wouldn't hurt them that much, especially with how little people actually bought stuff on their service. So maybe there's that too.
Honestly, I'm surprised it lasted as long as it did, just because honestly, I think when you had ISPs giving away Stadia starter kits, I was expecting just the service was just gonna implode on itself much sooner, because it just seemed like Google was just desperate to try to give the service a shot in the arm, and the best thought that they had was, okay, well, let's tell our partner ISPs to give these away for people who sign up for new internet service. That way, they can get them into the ecosystem, and boom, guaranteed money. And then, well, when that gamut didn't pay off as well as they thought, I figured, okay, it's just going to be a matter of months before the service pops. And here we are a few years later, and now we're going to see the end of the service this coming January. So, yeah, it's just a real genuine surprise for me that the service lasted as long as it did.
3 years. I mean, I guess I'm not entirely surprised it lasted as long as it did, because Google was putting looked like a lot of money into this service, and also advertising it in certain aspects. The advertising went down around the time last year. They stopped advertising as much. And by the way, those ads were terrible. there was
Oh
nothing.
yeah.
There was nothing appealing about those ads. Like, they put a good amount of money trying to market this. And then if you compare that to Luna, which is Amazon's streaming service, where they did nothing, and I mean nothing, to market that, it doesn't surprise me that they did it as long as they did. In fact, I thought they were going to stick it out a little bit longer. I was expecting this to be a next year thing, like they would announce next year at a certain time that they were going to do this. But I guess the costs were getting so out of control, or were just not worth it, to a point where they just decided to cut bait right then and there, and that would have been the end of it. Do you think that a streaming platform like that can succeed in the future, or is this something that is just not tenable in this type of environment?
I think Stadia was just too early um, for what it was. Mostly because just I can't remember the exact source, but I believe it was reported by GameIndustry.biz this year. I want to say almost 75% of games were purchased as digital copies. So the amount of people buying physical copies actually has gone down this year for once. So I mean, just I think there is a possibility that maybe we might see digital sales being sort of the norm, but I think streaming technology stuff, both like Stadia and Amazon's competing Luna service, I think those particular services have another problem to get past, and that problem being just not all internet services are created equal.
Hmm.
I mean, in my case, I'm lucky that my neighborhood is actually wired for AT&T fiber, and I'm able to get gigabit speeds. But if you cross a certain threshold in my neighborhood, you get into places where you are not eligible for AT&T fiber, and the best you can hope for is either one, Comcast has improved their cable lines to offer gigabit cable, but if they haven't, then you're just going to be stuck with whatever speeds that they can provide that service area, or you can get AT&T DSL.
Ugh.
And yeah, just if you're stuck in a situation like that, yeah, there's no way that something like Stadia or Luna is just going to be even possible to play. And then you have places that are completely out in the sticks in the boonies where they may not even have copper or fiber optic runs to the neighborhood. And maybe the only service that they can even hope to get is something like Elon Musk's Starlink service. Starlink, while great for providing internet in just kind of backwater areas wherever, it's got a lot of latency. So yeah, you've got situations like that where just even if you claim that your servers are everywhere, if the person doesn't have the ability to have high speed, low latency internet, it's not even going to matter.
I think another thing to point out here is that even though digital games are outselling, is that what you said? It's outselling physical games at this point right now? Like more people
I think
are buying.
so.
Let's say it's 50-50. Okay, I think the thing with that is that even though that you don't have a hard copy, you do have a copy somewhere of that game. So if you, I don't know, let's say you bought Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, okay, and you want to play it for some ungodly reason. If you have the disc copy, technically you can play it. Or if you download it off Steam and you have all the files, you can still play it. You definitely still can do it. Whereas with Stadia, you're still paying that $60, but it can be pulled off at any time. It can be taken off completely, which is a really unappealing prospect to have for somebody. And I know a lot of people are not happy with things going digital, but if you still have the files, you still have a running game. So people are a little more comfortable with that than having a service where at any point that can be taken off and you're screwed because you have no files, you have no copy whatsoever. The other thing that I will say when it comes to Stadia or something like Stadia working in the future is I don't think a wholly streaming service is going to work. I think it has to be a feature. And I'm pointing that because xCloud is something on Microsoft that you can use with Game Pass. And I don't hear a lot of people complaining about xCloud, but it's a feature on a bigger service. So I think that is probably how streaming services is going to work right now when it comes to gaming, until the latency gets so good that it's not a problem. It would have to be a service on something and not the main feature. So, like PlayStation, Xbox, God forbid if Nintendo does it with their Nintendo Online games, so they have that as well. Like, I think they're doing it correctly right now because it's just part of an extra feature on an overall service instead of being the entire service. I think and you're right on this, I think we're about 10, 15 years away for a viable streaming service to be fine with gamers at this point. And let's also be fair, too. You have to get gamers conditioned to be okay with it. And the best way to do that is what I think Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo is doing right now, is making it a part of a service and then when the time comes, they can rip the Band-Aid and they can go, well, the service is fine, so I guess it's okay, blah, 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 whatever. All right. Anything more to
Yeah.
add? Go ahead.
And I was going to say, with regards to boxed games versus digital, I found the information. So GamesIndustry.biz basically did sort of an infographic post on the major statistics of the year. And when it came to the discussion of boxed games versus digital games in the PC space, there was only 2% physical sales and 98% of the sales were digital.
Oh.
And that makes sense because you've got Epic, you've got Steam, you've got GOG's Galaxy service now. I mean, you've got all that, which pretty much do most of the video game selling on PC nowadays. But what was fascinating was the console market breakdown. They quote the numbers from a report from Newzoo that was published back in November 2022. The console breakdown is 28% of purchases this year were for boxed hard copy games, and 72% of purchases for the console games were actually via digital stores.
Okay, that's interesting. So, but yeah, like people are getting more comfortable getting digital, and I think one of the main reasons too is you get the game right away. You don't have to go to a GameStop when the game releases and then come back home with the game. You can just play right away when that happens. So, makes sense to me.
It'll be really interesting to see how the streaming game landscape comes along because, again, I think Stadia was an interesting idea, but just one, it was just way too expensive. Sales were very, very few and far between, if anything.
Yeah.
And they didn't really have like a killer app that would get people immediately to join the service and suffer through it and go, okay, this isn't great, but hey, this game's interesting, it plays okay, sure, why the hell not? But and I think Amazon's Luna service is also in trouble too, so don't be surprised if we see an announcement that they'll be discontinuing that sometime.
Yeah, I would agree with you right there. I think the killer app that Stadia was trying to make was Baldur's Gate 3, which wouldn't have been a smart idea for a number of reasons, but Baldur's Gate 3 has been in development since 2018, I think. It's been a while it's been in development, so I remember in its advertising and in that big press junket they had, like that was their big game. So yeah, but yeah, that was also I think it was a poor choice. Not that I think that Baldur's Gate is a bad game, not at all, but for something so niche to be that killer app wasn't really the smartest of moves. But let's move on to the next topic, and we're going to go ahead and spin the wheel for our 5 topics. Zero, are you ready to spin that wheel?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it! Spin, 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 spin. What do we got? What do we got? Uh-oh. 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 Zero.
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing that gave us our biggest amount of views on our channel this year, and it's the Intellivision Amico. Now.
Oh, yeah, that train wreck.
Yeah. I'm going to give some ancillary points real quick. Tommy Tallarico announced the Amico in 2017, I believe. And since then, it's been quite a mess, to say the least. So I'm going to, I guess despite my better judgment for some people, I'm going to leave the floor on to you to go over exactly what happened this year with the Amico.
They had been making promises to get the system out by this year. And what made it weird was they had some very, very strict restrictions on how much the games could cost, what games could be offered online, what type of games that they were looking for, just really, really odd, stringent requirements that some developers felt that it was just really constrained. Um, so some people were just kind of left scratching their heads, going, "Okay, it looks like they're trying to make a Wii-like console, but with a controller that looks like a baby smartphone sort of thing, and this just looks really, really weird." And then, of course, got all sorts of like monetary oddness that went on. And then about 4 months ago, somebody on the Intellivision Amico subreddit actually had posted some leaked documents that apparently came from a former disgruntled employee.
Oh yeah.
And the plot gets even further interesting. So apparently they were trying to raise $30 million in funding. And according to late SEC filings, they only ended up getting 1.6 million in convertible notes. And then this person notes debt at 5% interest, which may be converted to equity to the holder during this fundraising period. One of the presentation slides from this doc leak said that they were going to target the console with a price of $229. And if you were a video game retailer, you would be buying the console at $190 a unit. So retailers would only get a whopping 17%.
No, do we know I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do we know what the markup that retailers usually get for consoles?
For stuff like PS5s, Nintendo Switches, and Xbox consoles, unfortunately, no. All that stuff is under NDA. And I remember at one point I tried to search up stuff when I saw this doc leak. I was just like, okay, well, shit, this looks like a fool's errand to try to even figure out what the margins are for the major brand consoles. But yeah, just apparently this 17% margin for the Amico seemed low, and this one person in this this doc leak post surmises that when they talked to retailers, the retailers probably saw the margin, were like, "Oh hell no,
Yeah,
no way, no how."
right. Like for something to cost that much and to get that little in return, and you'd also have to think about the actual space that the console's occupying, and it would just be not cost effective at all for them to do that. And with retailers trying to put less and less space out on the floor, it would make no sense whatsoever for them to take that type of cost and to take that much of a cost for that little of a payoff. So that makes a lot of sense. But
and then their marketing strategy was to really lean hard into the family angle. The advertising strategy that they came up with would be to recruit the following celebrities: Ellen DeGeneres, Jessica Alba, Sean Astin, and Jim Parsons, and to possibly partner with brands like Lego and Vans, the sneaker company.
okay, this is sounding more and more vaporware to me, or more.
Oh yeah,
this is. I thought I read a little bit on the Amico, so again, hardware is not my thing. I generally don't pay attention to things that I clearly thought were not going to come out in the first place, but this smells of a scam. This smell, like, I understand, like, hearing this is like, oh, no wonder why people thought this was a possible scam. And this was becoming a bit of a meme throughout the year as well. But what came to a head in the middle of the year this year with the Amico?
So there was some controversy with Tommy Talrico, apparently with some spouting some racist diatribes.
Oh, boy.
So basically, just when that happened, they basically had to shuffle him out and just say, Yeah, he's no longer part of the Amico project. We've got someone else taking over, and we promise the Amico's not vaporware. We promise, guys.
Hmm.
And I think what even gets further weird is last year they offered people the ability to buy physical copies of Amico games, and you could buy like a collector's package that had like a grand total of the 5 launch games that would be coming out for the console for like I think somewhere around either 100 or $130. And it was just like, aren't we putting the cart before the horse? Because you guys don't even have a console yet,
Yeah.
let alone any actual release date for this console, and you're already, selling games. And do we have any idea of what kind of format these games are on? Are they going to be on proprietary cartridges, or is it going to be some sort of like really weird read-only micro SD card? What the hell format is it going to even be on?
Yeah.
And I think they ended up just with this whole console delay, they ended up just offering people to just get a complete refund on this like package of cartridges, or if you just had ordered like a couple of individual cartridges, that people who just got plain frustrated, going, okay, well, you guys obviously don't have a date for when this thing is coming out. I want to get a refund on these cartridges that I ordered last year, because obviously you have no earthly idea when this thing is coming out.
To me, the Amico seemed more like, I think the smarter thing to do with the Amico was to make it more of an Evercade device. Do you know what the Evercade is?
Yeah.
Yeah. For those who don't know, the Evercade is, I think it's 2 devices, right? It's a portable device, and it's also a console device. But
Yeah,
what it is,
they've got both a portable and a home console, and I think the portable device is getting a revision.
yeah,
Um, that I think Amazon US has pre-orders going for the new portable revision. So, but that's a whole nother topic.
like the Evercade. Let me see how much this is. It's about either 100 to $150. It's on sale on Best Buy for 130. It's the console version with 2 controllers, and it comes with, I think, a few cartridges. It's the Blaze Evercade versus Premium Pack 2. Okay, $130. Okay, seems kind of reasonable with some games, and I think the cartridges themselves are like $20, and they come with multiple games. That's what I thought. I think the best thing that the Amico could have been, if they were gonna stick to that, is to make it cheaply, and get it out as soon as possible. The fact that it's now taken almost 5 years to actually get anything out there, and do we even know what the console looks like at this point? Is there I know that when we did the article, or we did the thing on our podcast months ago, that we had a picture of it, but I'm not even sure if that is an artist rendering or if that's the actual console. Do we have?
I believe it's the actual console, because there were some people who actually went to like one of the playtest meetings where you could actually play on the Amico,
Mhm.
and they were just like, yeah, you think it looks super neat, but when you get there in person, just the controllers are just like really bad Android phones, basically.
Yeah, that was the other thing. And then I've read as well that you don't need the controllers if you have an iOS device or an Android device. You can use that as a controller too. So it's like, okay, what's the point of this? So yeah, this seemed like it's either one of 2 things. It's either a scam, or someone just had an idea of, I want consoles the way they used to be, and failed to realize that there is a reason why we moved forward in the console space, even though there are some things we don't like about it right now. But I think this is the same people who said that they're not going to allow downloadable content and updates. Am I right on
Yeah,
that?
yeah, that
Right.
was one of the provisions that they had for anyone who was going to do development on the Amico console. That basically they wanted games to be 100% perfect on release. That way, just you didn't have to force the game to go on the internet to grab updates and things like that. So so that was one requirement that some developers were like, okay, well, you know, QA testers catch a lot, but QA testers aren't perfect. So why the hell can't we, provide updates for things that we end up finding later that may not have been caught in QA? And apparently, just that was one requirement that they stuck with their guns on. They're just like, nope, we want these games to be as perfect as they can be on launch because we don't want to deal with things like having the console download updates and things like that.
Yeah.
Oh, one of the other interesting things on this doc leak that was posted on Reddit was there was a game development slide that was a part of this trove of leaked documents, and in the game development slide, they list brands like Disney, Marvel, Ninja Turtles, and Paw Patrol. And what made it interesting is they clearly didn't have the rights to any of these things.
Oh God.
So it was just kind of like just this fever dream list of, yeah, we're gonna have Disney games on this thing, we're gonna have Marvel games on here, we're gonna work with Nickelodeon and get Ninja Turtles on here, we're gonna have Paw Patrol games and all this other stuff. And then in the game development slide deck, there's another slide that lists like just a bunch of games just that are supposedly coming to the console, and then there's a caption in this slide that says 88 games in the pipeline, and then they name off titles like Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, Transformers, Pac-Man. And if you were an investor in the room, I would imagine the first question you'd want to ask is, do you guys actually have licensing contracts for these brands, or are you just blowing this out your ass?
Yeah, this has the smells of a scam big time. And I guess it's a good thing that they are refunding the games, which I guess would be a sign that it wasn't really a scam, but just a really ineptly done business plan. But yeah, this is a disaster. But the thing that with the Amico that always dumbfounded me is that from moment one, people were saying, this sounds fishy. Like, this doesn't sound so good. What was the point of this? Like, what do you think it was that got people to get interested in this device in the first place?
I think it was just more the fact that it was the return of the Intellivision brand, that it was trying to kind of capture the glory days of just family video gaming way back in the day, and bring it to the modern day era, but in a more accessible sort of way. And honestly, just when I was looking through the trove of leaked documents on Reddit and everything, just it didn't even seem like they were focused on that too, because on one of the documents that was leaked, there's a multi-page document that was called the Fact Book. On page 18 of the Fact Book, they apparently wanted to have an esports scene around the Amico.
Oh, God. Oh, man. So just a bunch of corporate buzzwords that we've all been noticing throughout the gaming industry?
Yeah, so it was just basically buzzword salad.
From what it sounds like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, or if you have another way of thinking about this, is that this might be the last time we're hearing from the Intellivision Amico. Like with Tommy Tallarico, I think its biggest name off the project, and now they're issuing refunds. The Amico might just have a slow death, a very quiet and slow death in the next year. And we may not even hear that it's dead unless they officially announce that they are ceasing production of this console. So, what do you think?
Yeah, would not surprise me if just maybe in the next couple months we just hear them go, okay, yeah, there's just no way we're going to produce this thing. So sorry, this thing just isn't coming together. We're just gonna throw in the towel and just call this thing dead.
Mm.
If anyone's curious about the treasure trove of documents, we'll probably post the Reddit link to the Intellivision Amico sub that has all these leaked documents for anyone who wants to go ahead and peruse through them and just see how much of a fever dream this whole thing is.
Yeah. Okay. Basically, it sounds like either a scam or just I think what you said it best, a fever dream that was just ineptly with an inept business plan, essentially.
Just this has been one of the most fascinating pieces of vaporware this year.
Yeah. And that's essentially what's going to be is vaporware at this point. I foresee from what you've told me and what little I've read, this has the Phantom written all over it. If people want to remember the Phantom, okay, we'll move on to the next topic. All right, Zero, we got 4 more to go here, and we have another topic we can do. So, are you ready to spin that wheel?
Yeah, let's go with the next one.
Do it! Ah! And it spins. Where are we going? Uh-oh. So, Zero, if there is one company that I think had an awful year, it's Blizzard. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And I mean all year. They dealt with bad press amongst bad press about either business practices or the way they treat their employees, and also to their games. Blizzard had 2 big releases this year, and that is Diablo Immortal and Overwatch 2. Now, why don't we get started with the first game that was released this year, and that's Diablo Immortal. We, of course, have read and heard the meme that was done in BlizzCon 2018, I think, with the guy asking if is this a out-of-season April Fool's joke, and then the "Do you not have phones?" the thing that the director said on there. I mean, we don't have to go over that again. Well, we just did, but we don't really have to go into too detail with that. But I think it's important to point out that when preview coverage was going on in this game, the talk was cautiously positive for Diablo Immortal. Was it not?
Yeah, the initial previews seemed to say, "Hey, just this seems like a great mobile translation of a Diablo game to mobile phones, and it's kind of neat that if you don't like the idea of playing it on your phone, you can play it on PC." So the initial thoughts seemed positive, but that all quickly turned sour once the game actually launched to the public, and then the severity of the microtransactions really came to a head.
Right. And that's what people were cautious about when they said they were cautiously optimistic, because the alpha and beta versions that they released to the press and to people in New Zealand and I think Australia basically said the game's great, but we don't know what the microtransactions are like. So we see where they could go with it, but we're not sure exactly what it is. When it was released, oh my god, the amount of microtransactions and ways to spend money in this game was unbelievable. I want to point out that of the 2 of us, I think I spent the most money on Diablo Immortal. And only because I felt compelled to, just to know exactly how good or bad the service is. Did you spend any money on Diablo Immortal?
Actually, I managed to exercise self-control, and I didn't spend a single thing.
Ah, good for you. I played the game for 2 months. I got a couple of battle passes, and I also got the Boon of Plenty on there as well. And, which I think was a big mistake, anytime that they would have the end of act chests, I'd buy them as well. I ended up spending $110 on Diablo Immortal. And I will say this, at no point did I feel like that I was gaining power, or that I was gaining an advantage, or that I was going through the game at a faster, more, how do I put this? It didn't feel like I was getting more fun for the money I was making. In fact, I felt I was doing the bare minimum of what I should have been doing with the $100 that I spent. And that, to me, essentially told me that they were expecting people to spend a lot of money to get powerful in the game, which is absolutely awful. Like, to spend $100 and think that you're not getting any extra fun out of it, or that you think you're getting the fun that you should have expected to get when the game is free, is just awful on this. But I do want to point out, the game plays well. It is a good playing game, but the money I spent on it just made it feel absolutely unsatisfying. It was pretty bad, I think. But yeah, we can go over like a lot of the issues that it had. I mean, there were stories about you had to spend $150,000 to max level your character. There were stories of people spending double that to play the game. There were stories as well of people who were trying to get the gems, which are blind box items, and spending thousands upon thousands of dollars and not getting a 5-star gem. And then in my case too, when I finally got a 5-star gem, it was the wrong gem that I needed. So the only thing I could do was break up that gem, which absolutely sucked. It was so terrible. So yeah, there was a lot of greedy, disgusting mechanics in the game that took, I thought, was a solid Diablo, not like a main Diablo that I would have considered a main Diablo, but it was disgusting to a point where I felt like I was being taken for a ride throughout the entire game to just spend more money, and it's awful. I look back at that and been like, I felt like I wasted my time and money, and that's not something you want when you're playing a game.
And I think what made things even more funnier was you had a few stories going around that some people who ended up being whales to just try to get everything maxed out on their character ended up getting so powerful that they ended up not being able to matchmake with other players.
Yep.
And in some cases, it just made these whales just want to completely quit the game because they were just like, okay, well, this sucks. I can't matchmake with anyone to kind of show off how swag I look with all my elite gear and shit. I've got no motivation to play. So, of course, Blizzard ends up having to scramble double time going, shit. We need to keep the whales. We need to keep them on the service. But how do we make sure that they get matched up into lobbies that are fair-ish, and that way these whales can show off how cool their gear looks and potentially get other players more interested in also playing Diablo Immortal and also putting money into the game and everything.
Yeah. We heard in the first month that they made about 50 million. I think that was the number going around. That they made about 50 million in the first month of Diablo Immortal. And people were like, oh my god, this just proves that they're being rewarded for their scummy behavior, which I will say to my dying day. If I was somebody who was running that game or put the money into that game, and that's what I got in the first month, I'd actually be kind of upset because of how much money that Diablo 3 made in its first month. It pales in comparison. And you can talk about, oh, but it's a long tail game. That doesn't freaking matter, because if a long tail game, like how I put it was this, okay? Business people who say long tail doesn't mean, they're not thinking, oh, it's going to take a lot of time to get my money back. They're thinking, oh, I'll get my money back and more in a long sense of time. That's what they were thinking. And I'm betting that's what they were thinking too on this. So my thought is that people who are running Activision Blizzard were probably not too pleased with the amount they were getting back. And I've also not heard much in regards to sales numbers and money being made on Diablo Immortal since then. So I would venture to guess that that money went down a significant amount, but no one's talking about it. I mean, we'll find out probably, I would say, third quarter of next year, what the year end, the year over year money making thing is with Diablo Immortal. But I don't think it's going to be as big as I would say the first month of Diablo 3 would be. I'd venture 150, 175 million next year for the year. And again, if I was a shareholder, I'd be pretty disappointed because you're also sharing that with Tencent, and you also have to put more money into the game being made. So what you're probably getting in quote unquote profit, if you are getting anything in profit, is something along the lines of 70, 80 million? Maybe? That's me spitballing right there. So I don't think this is, I mean, they might be saying out there, we're pleased with what we're making in Diablo Immortal, but I think I'd be pretty disappointed if I was a shareholder.
They have some popularity charts, and it has slipped so hard over the last couple months.
Right. And if they are serious about getting this game to have a healthy population and to make it as big as possible to make money, which I don't think is going to happen after they release Diablo 4, because I think a lot of people were playing this game out of curiosity and because they were wanting a new Diablo. But if they're going to do that, they're going to have to fix the monetization and make it a lot more fair than it was. So Diablo Immortal was, and it was also a sign of that the Blizzard of old is over. And the thing that people would point out is that this game probably wouldn't have been released under the old Blizzard. And I have to agree, even though it was a mobile free-to-play game, I would have to agree, because I think that if it was old Blizzard, they would probably still do it free-to-play, but they wouldn't be making it as dependent on making money, for them making money to make you more powerful. So, you have to spend money to actually get gems. That's how bad it is. And the gems are the only way really to level up consistently in the game. So, it was, I had fun with it, but when it came to its monetizations, it killed the game after a while. So
let's move on to Overwatch 2 and just how much of a clusterfuck that has been just over the last couple months.
Yeah. When Overwatch 2 was announced, people were perplexed, to say the least, because the first thing was, why does there need to be a sequel? And when they announced it, they justified it in saying that we're going to have a whole new single-player campaign that is going to dive right with the multiplayer. And that was their justification of having a sequel. Well, unfortunately, the single-player stuff has not been released yet, so we don't know how good that is. And what it sounds like is the single-player stuff they are releasing next month is probably going to be a small chunk of it. But Overwatch 2 had some controversies even before it was released. And I think the big one was it going from 6v6 to 5v5. Now, I will say this. I think the change was a positive one. And I've kind of heard the same thing with others too who used to play Overwatch 2 a lot, where it was just a match of contrition, where the only way to win a match is one person has to make a small mistake, and then boom, the whole house of cards goes tumbling down. Whereas there's a lot more wiggle room with the way the 5v5 match is. I think it's a lot more fast-paced and a lot more fun in that. But a lot of Overwatch diehards were not happy with that. But they would have been fine if Overwatch 1 stuck around. But that's not what happened, is that, Zero?
No, they decided to go ahead and shut down Overwatch 1 almost immediately when Overwatch 2 went live to the public.
So that means if you have the disc for Overwatch 1, like I did for Xbox, okay, you can't play the game. Because even if you put the disc in, what it does then is automatically downloads the Overwatch 2 client and makes you play that game. So Overwatch 1 is essentially done. You can't even download it. You can't even play the assets on the disc, because what the disc does is automatically puts you right into 2, and that's it. And especially, and something I found that was weird. Let's say you had Overwatch 1 installed on your Xbox, and then you have the assets there. Goes, I'm going to play Overwatch 1, see what it's like. It would stop you from playing and download 2 automatically. So Overwatch 1 is essentially toast at this point. But I will say, too, you can play everything you did on Overwatch 1 on Overwatch 2. So it's not that big of a deal. But I think the people who missed 6v6 the most are the ones that were kind of pissed about that.
The other thing that ended up irking a lot of people was just how much of a cash grab the Overwatch coin shop was.
Oh, yeah.
Just, I think the worst and most egregious example was the Kiriko premium skin set that they had during launch. It was like a whopping, I want to say like $20 or $35 or something, and the skin barely had any changes. It just looked, took away her Shrine Maiden outfit and just had her kind of like in kind of like a casual streetwear outfit, but it didn't change her Japanese paper talismans or anything. Like there were no unique weapon changes, which was a stark contrast to what a legendary skin pack would give you in Overwatch 1, where with legendary skins, it was a full cosmetic revamp of everything. The character's weapons, the character's clothes, just it was just the red carpet treatment. And here you have the first brand new character for Overwatch 2. She has a legendary skin for sale. And the only thing that has changed on the legendary skin is the character's clothes. It really got some people quite angry about it. And then I think the other thing that also got people really angry was during launch, there was a glitch that if you bought something from the store, in some rare cases, the store would double charge you on Overwatch coins. And if you went negative, you couldn't log into your account until you bought Overwatch coins to offset how much you were negative by.
Jesus. That's crazy. God, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, so some people ended up getting very pissed and having to basically just basically send tickets to the Blizzard support line and say, "Hey, I got double charged for a purchase, and now I can't get into my game because the game is saying you need to even out your balance before we can let you log in. Help me fix this because I didn't double purchase a freaking skin."
Yeah. And there were other issues as well going into Overwatch 2 coming out, but the sales shop was a big one. I mean, the sales shop was so damn bad that people were just like, I want the loot boxes back. A lot of people were saying that, which stunned me, but again, that's probably why they did it that way too. But anyway, the other thing that was pretty bad was the Battle Pass. Not only was it super grindy, it also limited to how much XP you can actually make. Like, a lot of people, sometimes with Battle Passes, they'll just no-life the game for about a couple of weeks, and then they'll go ahead and just stop playing the game, or they'll just they'll play the game in a relaxing manner to play the game. In Overwatch 2, I mean, you can only you can only get XP for 3 of the daily tasks that you have. And then that's the same with their weekly tasks. You only can get so many from there. And then there are lifetime and season pass XP things that you can get. And then even then with the battle pass, let's say you get the battle pass, but none of the characters that are having skins are characters you play as. It's a waste of money at that point. So, and then on top of that, someone calculated with all the free coins that you'd get, how much time it would take you to get, I would say, what was it, like a legendary skin with all the free coins that you're getting from the battle pass and from your quests. And I think it was a rather long time.
I think it was like anywhere from like 5 to 9 months or something.
Yeah, 7 to 8 months. Like, you can only get one legendary skin. That's how stingy they are with the rewards on this. There were a ton of problems, and it wasn't with the gameplay. Again, another thing with the Blizzard game, the gameplay wasn't the problem. It was the stuff around it. It was the monetization. It was the shop. It was the pass. That was what made it incredibly unsatisfying, because you weren't getting the steady stream of awards that you were getting in Overwatch 1. So, yeah, like, despite the games that Blizzard made this year being pretty good games, they were all pretty much bogged down by their shitty monetization practices. And this spells trouble for Diablo 4, because a lot of people, and me included, are excited for Diablo 4, but we're waiting for that other shoe to drop to know exactly what they're going to do with monetization, because they have said they're doing it. And they did say you're not going to be able to buy power when it comes to the cash, when it comes to Diablo 4, but that can be, that's some squirrely type of talk as well. Because you can technically not buy power, but you can have an auction shop, or you can have a shop where you can buy a weapon, and you would need, I don't know, Diablo coins to purchase that weapon, and that technically is buying power, but you're not buying the weapon per se, you're buying the coins that buy the weapon. So technically, that's true. So I'm excited for Diablo 4 because it looks really good, but I'm cautiously excited because I don't know exactly what they're going to do when it comes to monetization. What do you think?
That's really what I'm quite skeptical on, because the previews that they've shown of Diablo 4 look interesting. And I mean, it's going back to the more macabre setting and design of Diablo 2. So if anyone out there thought that Diablo 3 was a little bit soft on the grotesque gore and stuff like that, then Diablo 4 is a little bit of a return to the direction that 2 was all about.
Yeah.
So there's that, but really just I'm more and more wondering about a potential situation where they use basically some sharky legal language, kind of like with Diablo Immortals and the gems, where they're just like, oh well, the players aren't technically buying loot boxes; they're just buying these gems that give them a chance to open some additional premium treasure if they beat a challenge skill dungeon, and if they fail the dungeon, they get the gems back. So it's technically not a loot box. And when I saw that sort of sharky legal chicanery, I was just like, ooh, this really does not bode well for Diablo 4, because I really have some serious ethical concerns about Diablo 4 using some sort of really shaky and ethically shady language. Like, oh, well, you're not buying sweet weapons directly, you're buying Diablo coins, and Diablo coins can be used for cosmetic stuff, or you can use it to shop around at the weapon shop or whatnot. So
yeah,
that's sort of the stuff that I'm kind of bracing myself for. I think the game is coming out to Game Pass day one, so I mean, worst case scenario, I just play it on Game Pass and find out whether or not I like it. And if it's just like, oh yeah, this microtransaction stuff, nope, hell no, I'm checking the fuck out. Then at least I won't be out any cash.
Right. And I can see also things like, I don't know, coin doublers, or a item that improves your odds when you open chests or something along those lines. There are many things they can do to fuck with the RNG of the game, to make you pay for other things to improve those odds. So, again, technically you're not buying power, you're buying an extra chance to get more loot. And, you know, it could be all sorts of scummy things that they could do in that. This really was a year that if you believed that Blizzard is on a downfall, this is the year that proved it. Because you have two of their biggest games and their biggest of their biggest franchises essentially having bad years. Maybe not sales wise. I don't know the sales of Overwatch 2 and how that went, but when it comes to their standing of being like a gold tier publisher, that if it's a Blizzard game, it's a great game and you should buy it immediately, that I think came to an end this year. And it's kind of sad in a way. And I think that's also the reason why a lot of people are really hoping Microsoft buys Blizzard and Activision Blizzard out. Because their mentality is that they will make sure that Blizzard goes back to the way they used to be. Which I don't see that happening, but that's wishful thinking, I guess. But we will get into that when that topic comes in.
I think really just it'll be interesting to see how this all pans out, because at least with Blizzard and everything, because we've got the Microsoft Activision purchase that's kind of trapped in sort of legal limbo right now. So if by some miracle the sale passes, I know some people are hoping that Microsoft is going to magically fix the bad culture problem in Activision Blizzard, and I hate to be a Debbie Downer about this, but just I don't see Microsoft being the magic panacea that just magically fixes Blizzard. I just don't.
No, I don't either. I think a lot of people are hoping that, well, all right, we'll get into this real quickly and real smallly, but I think what they're hoping is that Bobby Kotick goes away. And I'm going to say right now, when they buy Activision Blizzard, he's not going anywhere.
I can see him staying on it short term as a consultant of sorts.
Yes.
But that's about it.
I think he'll get a nice payout. And he's one of those people who genuinely likes the job and likes what it gives him. Like, he is a perks guy. He is a guy that enjoys the power. He's not giving that up. He'll take the money, and he may not be the most powerful person in that company, but he's not giving up Activision Blizzard. He's just not going to do it. He, like you said, he'll be a consultant, or he'll stay with the company for a couple of years and then be out on his way after that.
Let's go ahead and spin the wheel for the next topic.
All right, Zero, so we're going to do one more wheel spin since we have some time. Zero, are you ready?
Yep, let's do it.
Let's do it! Ah, spin it! Oh no, it's going to be the one we were fearing. Uh-oh. Okay, so... Okay, guys. Yes, we just chose Microsoft purchasing ActiBliz. However... we foresee this being a very long topic. And instead of this being a 3-hour, 3.5-hour podcast, we're going to make this the first one for next week. So we will cover this next week, definitely. But I'm going to go ahead and remove it. And we're just going to spin the last two. Okay? So, Zero, are you ready for our actual topic?
Yeah.
Let's spin it. Okay. Games media implosion. So, here is what happened this year when it comes to games media. Now, games media is technically not a business thing when it comes to the game industry. Like, how do I put this? They are an interesting byproduct of the business when it comes to the business of making games. In the 80s, 90s, and a little bit in the 2000s, they were pretty important. And they were important to get, I would say, lesser known titles and more critically acclaimed titles up in the forefront to get good sales. They were important then. After the 2000s, they've become less and less important and less relevant. And it's not just because of how the landscape has changed through YouTube, but of decisions that these corporations and these sites have made, I would say, in the past 10 years, 12 years, I would say. So let's really get down to what happened here. A bunch of people have been laid off, or sites have been shut down due to the games media. That's why I'm calling it the games media implosion. I think the biggest one this year was G4. G4 started up in January, and it was shut down by October. I think is one of the most stunning downfalls that I have ever seen in a multi-million-dollar backed site and YouTube channel. I was stunned by how fast that went down. I didn't think it was going to last at all. But I thought it was going to be 2 or 3 years. For it to not last after 8 months was incredible to watch. Let's start with that. Zero, what are your thoughts on the G4 grand opening, grand closing?
I think really what kind of shocked me was some of the discussions on just how expensive the show was.
Oh my god,
yeah. You had just like insane budgets for like sets, furniture to put on the sets, and then when they weren't getting enough viewership, they decided to then try to hire other Twitch personalities, and then they would pay these Twitch personalities literally like $200,000 or something just absolutely insane, just to have them like maybe show up like for one time to do like a streaming bit for one of their streaming shows. And it was just like, okay, why aren't you leveraging your actual talent? Why are you so desperate for just grasping at any viewership that you're willing to burn more money that you technically could be using towards better ends, but yet you're going to pay like Pokimane or Amaranth just $200,000 to show up like for a segment for like 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah. I remember hearing Amaranth was offered a lot of money to be on there, and she was not only on there, that was the one where she was in a bikini throughout the entire time, correct? Am I right?
Yeah, a very, very skimpy bikini and hiding in a ball pit.
Yes, okay. And that also highlights another problem that G4 had, is that I think they had a clear lack of direction, and when things weren't working out, they would pivot almost every single time. Like, let's call it what it is. They went full social justice in this aspect, even to the point where they were shaming the way G4 was. They were saying, we're going to do G4 again, but we're going to do it the right way. We're not going to have all the risque jokes and all that stuff, not realizing that stuff was the reason why it was successful in the first place. So, and then when that wasn't working, and I think we can all discuss what led to that not working, and that was the whole thing with Frosk calling out probably a couple of people for being sexist, which to an extent, I'm not going to... Okay, God, I guess we'll go over it, really. So basically, Frosk had a rant about sexism in gaming, and she complained that people were annoyed with the fact that she wasn't as bangable as Olivia Munn, and stuff like that. Now, I'm not going to deny that what she said happened didn't happen. I think that's a possibility, and that hurts. You know, I can understand why that hurts, but pointing it out the way she did and making a grand spectacle about it, is a great way for it to blow up in your face and have it happen 3 times as hard. I guess I don't know. I guess to a certain extent, I can understand that maybe pointing it out would not be such a bad idea, but you would, the way I would have done it would basically say is, hey guys, look, if you don't like it, if you don't like what we're saying, we have other content for you. We have this and that, da 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 da. We have different types of personalities, but you don't have to be that gross about it. You know? Like, be a more conciliatory. When you become more aggressive about it is when those type of people will just do it harder, do it more, and do it worse, which is exactly what happened. And then you have the aspect as well where people who you weren't talking about are going to think, oh, wait, you think I'm capable of that? Well, fuck you. I'm not watching. And you said don't like it, don't watch. Guess what? I'm not even going to watch. I'm not even going to give it a shot. Fuck you. And that's, I think, exactly what happened in this. Like, again, would I say that Frosk's rant killed G4? No. But it definitely sped up the process, I think.
Oh yeah, it was definitely pouring a giant can of gasoline on the raging fire.
Right. I will not blame Frosk specifically for it closing down. This was management. Management was so fucking inept in this. Like, even after the reports, like, when I read the reports I think that Nathan Grayson had in the Washington Post, that he had on this shutting down and how it was run, it was clear management had no idea what it was doing. That was another problem, too. They brought back Adam Sessler, and Sessler did a great job pouring more gasoline into the fire, essentially, with some of his, I don't know, political hot takes, is what I would call them. Did you read on some of the things that Sessler has said?
Yeah, so he had political hot takes, but also, if anyone criticized him, he would just get really, really bitter. He wouldn't, he just wouldn't take it with like a little bit of grace, and just kind of, laugh it off and stuff, because like most personalities, if they're being trash talked by like someone, typically most celebrities who handle it with grace will just go, okay, neat, you got a different opinion, okay, you can totally have a fair opinion, whatever.
I'll just take my boatloads of money and be right here, thank you. It's like, that's
exactly
that's how they usually say it. They actually how would do it. They would say, well, I'm in the position of power, so yeah, okay, have your bitch session, I'll just be over here, thanks. But I will also say this, that has never been Adam Sessler. That has never been Adam Sessler. What made, I think, Adam Sessler popular at a certain point was towards the end of G4, the first time, was he had this thing called Sessler Soapbox. And he would take emails and comments that he would get from people and just excoriate them. Just make fun of them. Just call them stupid. And granted, they were deserved, but he had no shame in saying, like, yeah, I'm better than you, shut the fuck up. It is essentially how he would put that. So, and now you can't do that anymore. You really can't. Because, yeah, you're going to have one group that say, oh, yeah, you're so cool. But you're going to have a whole other saying, fuck you, I don't want to deal with that. And you need both to run an effective business at that point. So he didn't help either on that end. G4 had a lot of problems when it came to how it was run and the direction it was going into. So that wasn't much of a surprise when that was officially shut down. I think it was more surprised it was done as fast as it did, but in the end, it was not really that big of a surprise. And what I'm concerned about and what I feel bad about in this is the talent that was there. I mean, Frosk and Sessler, unless they do their own YouTube channels, I don't see anybody hiring them. I think they're poison at this point. They're toast. Like, no one will hire them. And if I was Frost at this point, because I think of the two of them, I think Frost has a better shot of having a career doing what she was doing. But if I were Frost, I would take a year off and then do a Twitch channel. If I were Sessler, just stop. Dude, just stop. This is a young person's game, and you're too old, and you're too bitter, and you're now too hated at this point.
Yeah.
You're not going to go anywhere. But the other talent, like the presenters, who weren't already YouTubers, I feel bad for them because this stink will be on them for a long time. And unless you're Gina Darling, who is liked on both sides of the coin, I think you're going to have a really tough time finding another place to work, especially with a lot of these websites now trying to get rid of staff. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm probably with you that I definitely feel most sorry for some of the other talent from G4. They are probably going to have to try to do something to wash the stink of G4 off of them, and make sure that whoever decides to pick them up knows that, hey, yes, I was part of G4, but maybe they might have to say something like, but I was behind these segments. I did not have a segment with Adam Sessler or Frost.
Yeah. Or you would have to, in some aspects, yeah, I didn't agree with what Frost said. And if you do, and I know some companies are like this too, they're going to say, okay, then you're going to have to make a public statement saying so. Otherwise, we're not going to hire you. And
yeah,
that in itself is not good. That's not a good position to be in. I think, honestly, and I'd hate to say this, I think a lot of that talent is probably no longer in the gaming industry. I think that's it. Either they'll go and do something else, or they'll find new jobs doing something else. I think they're done, and that's sad. Another thing that's done are a lot of games journalists. A lot of sites had a lot of layoffs this year. Fanbyte, a site that I honestly never even heard of until this year, got gutted by Tencent this year, and they fired staff without warning. IGN, right before the Game Awards, had layoffs, which the timing of that was interesting. It was Ziff Davis that was doing the layoffs, and it just so happened to be that when IGN started laying off people. Who else laid off? I think Game Informer laid off a bunch of people. Who else?
Yeah, and I think Game Informer's down to a skeleton crew of like either 3 to 5 people or something.
And they're still doing a magazine for some reason?
Yeah, I was just like, I honestly feel sorry for the skeleton crew there, because they're probably way overworked at this point.
Yeah. Polygon, I believe Polygon also laid off some people. Kotaku will probably lay off as well, especially with how much they pay for their staff. That's bound to happen at some point.
Yeah, and speaking of Kotaku, there was one person whose loss really, really hurt me the most, but it was because he had passed away from health issues, and that's Mike Fahey.
Yeah.
He had unfortunately passed away due to health complications, and he was one of the old hat Kotaku people that I quite liked, mostly because he had the fun fun Snack Taku segment where he would just kind of go out and find like some of the wackiest fast food stuff, and he'd go, yeah, okay, this thing's a little gimmicky. Okay, this thing looks totally fucking weird, but holy shit, it's actually kind of delicious. And then he had a segment called Toy Taku where he would kind of like check out and evaluate some of the toys and collectibles in the gaming sphere and everything. But unfortunately, he passed away this year, and that was a very, very sad loss to see in the games journalism industry.
Yeah, and after Schreier left, Kotaku, that was really the only writer I think that anybody knew of and actually liked, for the most part, in Kotaku. And since then, their view count has been going downhill, like, even more than it usually has. So, yeah, like...
Yeah, and Steven Totillo also left Kotaku as well. He's over at Axios now, if I remember correctly.
Right. And that's another thing that... And you know what? I will say this. If you are a talented writer, I have zero issues you going from a site like Kotaku and going into like a mainstream site like Axios or the Washington Post or Bloomberg. I have zero issue with that. My issue are the writers who go from writing articles to then working for gaming studios. Those are the ones where I'm like, like, that's a little suspect. But then, on the other hand, I don't blame them, because on that point, like, these places pay shit. And they essentially, especially with IGN and GameSpot, they churn out their staff like crazy to a certain extent. And the layoffs are not something that's a different thing. What they do, basically, is they have writers who write the same things all over and over again. And when they reach a certain age and they start demanding more money, they let them go and they get somebody out of college. And that's it. And the thing is that the audience that watches and reads their stuff doesn't care. They don't care. So if you're a writer or a presenter or a streamer or something of some talent, at that point you got to do what's best for you and not be so loyal to a company, and just either go out on your own or go someplace that will pay you well. And I completely understand that. And that's going to be the problem with these sites at a certain point. Because, yes, I've heard Kotaku pays well, but they don't have the views they used to. And when that's a problem, and they're not getting the views and the advertising is not going well, they're going to start laying off people, I would say sometime around the middle or end of next year. I'm expecting that to happen. I think Polygon's going to get shut down at some point. IGN and GameSpot are going to start laying off more people. I think that's going to happen. And that's also because people tend to watch more YouTubers than they do IGN or GameSpot. The only time I ever hear anybody talk about a video on IGN or GameSpot is when they say something stupid. That's it. That's the only time. Like, the review of Days Gone and the review of Dead Cells are from IGN are the only two that I remember from the past 10 years. And because one was stupid and the other one was controversial. That was it. Those are the only two. The quality in these sites hasn't grown with the audience. And the audience are finding other ways to get that content. And it's YouTubers, essentially. What do you think?
I think YouTube news commentary has really changed up the game, especially with channels that release daily content.
Yeah.
Because at that point, they're just doing short form videos going, hey, here's what I think about news article A, here's what I think about news article B, here's what I think about news article C. All right, tune in to me tomorrow and I've got more stuff. And whereas just it works well with people with very short attention spans, because I know some people just get plain bored reading pages worth of text. So yeah, I think as much as I hate to say it, just writing for gaming news sites is definitely not going to be the meta for most people. Most people are just gonna want to tune into a YouTube channel, have some person digest it in a way that they can kind of get out of a 10-minute video, and then just go, okay, great. That was a 10-minute video that explained this piece of news super quick. Great. That's all I need to know. I don't care for, just the ancillary details, or if the person is interested in some of the nitty-gritty and fine details, maybe they'll find like a long-form video essay channel that specializes in like deep dive research and produces videos that are anywhere from like 45 minutes to an hour or something.
Right. And then the interesting issue with the news commentators is that there's a reason why a lot of people are going to these news commentators, and it's that they don't want to support these websites. Or like you, and of course, there's also the ones like you said that just don't like reading articles, which is, I guess, I hate that, but I get it. But the other thing is, like, if someone just say, hey, there's this interesting article on Kotaku about X, they're going to turn and go, I fucking hate Kotaku. I'm not going to read that shit. But they'll listen to somebody read the article to them, no problem. Because they'll like the person who does it. Which is why I don't get why these sites have not just gone into doing that. Like, yes, have the people who report the news, but then have a YouTube channel dedicated to one or two people who not just report the news, but commentate on it. Essentially what they do with their podcasts at times. I don't understand why someone hasn't said, well, why aren't we doing the same thing? Why aren't we doing that? That makes all the sense in the world. And it really is either they don't have the talent and they think that no one will want to connect with any of the people they have, or management's lazy and doesn't want to evolve the formula. They just want to stick to what they have. And the formula is not working. So unless they decide to evolve what they're doing, I could see more layoffs and more problems coming down the line for these websites.
Especially if they don't adapt with the times, then yeah, I don't see them lasting very long, and they'll probably just kind of implode and go belly up. I think most of the writers for sites like Kotaku are also working from home too. So if they want to do like video format stuff, at minimum, all they would need to do is just maybe send all these writers a decent-ish webcam and maybe a green screen, and then just at that point, whoever's doing the main video editing can just kind of splice things together and just go, okay, splice in the writer who's talking about game such and such, slice them into a video frame of them playing whatever game that they're reviewing, or whatever game they're talking about, or whatever pictures that they've got regarding a certain news article that's being talked about, and just to kind of go from there.
Do you think it's due to lack of talent, or is it lack of management acumen?
I want to say it's probably a management thing, that management probably thinks, oh, just what do we need to do to generate revenue on the website? More ads, because Kotaku over the last 2 years has gotten worse with ads. It's just nothing but pop-ups all over the damn place. Then you've got the banners that show up. Then you've got the mid-page ads that will just show up, and it'll say, keep scrolling to read more of the article. And it's just like, sweet mother of God. Well, stop.
With Kotaku, I think it's both, really, because Kotaku has always had talented writers. I may have not agreed with them all the time, but I will admit they were talented. But now I don't see that same talent. And less people are going to the website. So if less people are going to the website, the only option that the people who run the website have is to bombard each page with ads. And hopefully something will hit when that happens. So I think with Kotaku specifically, it's both. It's a lack of talent, and a lack of good talent, and management not doing such a great job hiring new talent or making their website more desirable to read. I think with IGN, I think it's purely management on that point. I refuse to believe that they have that many people there and none of them are talented. Like, I refuse to believe that. But the IGN machine and the GameSpot machine has always been, they cloister those people in, and they're in the IGN-sphere, and if they go out elsewhere, they're persona non grata, unless they constantly are working with IGN on certain things, like Kinda Funny. Kinda Funny, even though they're all former IGN people, constantly work with IGN on things. So it's like they've never left to a certain extent. And that's, unfortunately, with those type of people, that's how they have to keep their jobs, because they have to remain attached to IGN. But what happens when IGN starts breaking down And same thing with GameSpot. What happens? Like, the only people from GameSpot that I think went on to do things outside of GameSpot were the Giant Bomb guys. And they're still doing it now, but that's really, from those two websites, like, I think they are the most successful. And you can debate how successful they actually were. Like, I used to love the Giant Bombcast until they all broke apart and they became a shell of their former selves. Even I can say, like, without GameSpot, like, I don't know, like, they were successful to a point, but I still came away a little disappointed with how everything turned out and how everything ended with Giant Bomb to a certain extent. So I don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm looking at games media, and this year I think is the beginning of the end. I think in 5 years, maybe a couple of these big sites will be up. Maybe IGN and GameSpot will still be there, but Kotaku, Game Informer, Polygon, like sites like that, I think they're gone by that time.
I would probably agree, especially if they just cannot get the viewership numbers that they need to sustain themselves, especially since a lot of these sites are definitely operate on ad revenue, and to have ad revenue work, you have to have people visiting it. If you have no one visiting, you're not getting ad revenue.
Yeah.
That's just how it works.
No, that's absolutely correct. And the other thing as well is the only time I hear anybody going to IGN for anything, it is review of a big game where they scroll down and look at the number and complain that the number is too low, or when there's a controversy. News and stuff, they go to YouTube. And that's it. That's really it. Like, I think what's going to happen, basically, is that next year, both GameSpot and IGN are going to severely lay off their news department, news and features department. They're going to concentrate more on video, and they're going to redesign their sites to be video and to have video stuff and everything. Of course, they're going to put it on YouTube because you would have no choice at that point. They might have exclusive videos for IGN and GameSpot, but I think they're going to have, like, people that will do press release stuff and like that, and they'll have one or two reporters, and that's it. The rest will be features, the rest will be top 10 lists, reviews, preview coverage. I think that's what IGN and GameSpot will be, and that will lead to more people being laid off, less overhead when it comes to staff, and yeah, I think these sites are dying, and the time of having these big, huge websites like IGN, GameSpot, 1UP, things like that is over. It's coming to an end. I think you're going to find more reporting on video and on YouTube in the next coming years. I think, at least. Like, I wouldn't be surprised, in my opinion. I wouldn't be surprised if Nathan Grayson or Jason Schreier starts getting some media training and decides to have a YouTube channel or have some sort of video presence for their websites or for their papers and stuff, and starts doing news that way. Like, I foresee that happening. What do you think?
Yeah, I could see some personalities like Jason Schreier maybe doing sort of like short form videos and things like that, or maybe in like long form investigational pieces and things like that, because like some of the investigations into the core practices of crunch in studios, I could potentially see Jason Schreier doing maybe like a long form video that maybe runs like maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours at the most, even of him like getting interviews with people from the games industry, or maybe anonymous voice testimony that's read by like an actor to anonymize the person. So I could potentially see something like that.
Yeah. And I would look at Jeff Grubb as the person that I would look at as an example. I don't think people realize that he writes. I think they watch him on Game Mess mornings, and they watch him on Giant Bomb, and they look at his Twitter and get his scoops there. I think a lot of them don't realize that he actually writes for a website. And I think that will lead to, I think a lot of, if not all people who are in the gaming sphere or in the games media will have to get comfortable being on camera if they're going to last. Because if they're not, I think they're not going to have a job in like a couple of years. Honestly, I think that's what it's going to come down to. I think a lot of these people who are just writers and want to write good work and everything are going to be a dime a dozen. And even if that's what their main thing is, they're going to have to be on camera. You're gonna have to diversify what you do to keep your job, because I think companies are, especially big companies like that, want to get the most out of the people that they have. And you might say, well, he's an outstanding writer. Yeah, but I can have a good writer who's also good on camera and also does good on podcasts. I'll take the guy who can do 3 things well than the guy who can only do 1 thing really well. And that's what a lot of people who run companies think. Like, they want to have as much talent with as less people as possible. So you're going to have to, basically diversify what you're going to have to do. Well, Zero, that is all for the final episode of the Capital Games podcast of this year. I just want to say, this has been an interesting year. We started this not knowing how this was going to go and what direction we were going to do this podcast in. And for the most part, like, I've been quite happy with how we've been going on this. We've gotten a good amount of views on YouTube. We've gotten some traction on the podcast. And for all of you that are continuing to watch and are checking out our YouTube channel, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for giving us a shot and checking out our content. I also want to say thank you to Zero. Not to get too hammy on this, but I went through a very hard time the past few years. And I just want to say you're one of the key people that got me out of it. And I want people to know that you are a good person. You've always been a good person to me. And if there's somebody that I want to do this with, I'm glad it's you. And I just want to thank you for doing this with me and to continue doing it with me into next year. So thank you. Thank you for taking this ride with me.
Yep, and my pleasure. Just it's like I've mentioned. Just I've always been sort of a amateur video game business analyst. So just it's kind of hard to find anyone who sort of has the same fascination that I do with just the gaming industry, and just kind of knowing proverbially how the sausage is made behind like some of the most expensive video games in the world.
Yeah. And it's something that I think if gamers would actually put more time into learning, I think they would understand how these games get made. They would understand why certain things are done the way they are, and how to change that stuff too. So, yeah. For the future of the podcast and for the YouTube channel, we're gonna try something different starting next year. I think we've decided, Zero, that we're gonna attempt to do more constant content throughout the week. So instead of having the podcast just every Tuesday and having the segments on every Wednesday, what we're gonna do is we're gonna cover the content as it happens. And we're just going to have YouTube channel. We're going to have YouTube videos, and we'll have it on the podcast feed as it happens, as it goes. We're probably not going to be like really on time. Like I don't think by the hour you're going to get a podcast thing. I think it'll be by the next day. But we're going to see how that goes, and I think that will turn out very well for us. So the way we're going to do this is changing, but we're not going anywhere. Zero, do you want to add anything else?
I know one of the ideas that we're potentially playing around with is maybe a weekly recap format on maybe like a Friday.
Yes.
And we'll probably do this recap segment with video game footage of us playing fighting games, or maybe just playing something that is co-op or so,
Yeah.
and just sort of talking through some of the maybe small short form pieces of news in the video gaming industry space, or maybe even touch on video game culture stuff. Maybe one example would be like maybe you and I play Senkei no Rondo 2 and talk about just how a fan group who is trying to do their own little fan remakes of Resident Evil and Resident Evil Code Veronica got their projects hit with a cease and desist because they decided to ask for donations or something.
Yeah.
So that would be sort of kind of the format that we're thinking on.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea, and I'm excited to try that out. So, yeah, we're going to be around next year, and we're going to continue doing what we're doing, and you're going to see some changes. So, yeah. For all of us at the Capital Games Podcast, I just want to wish you guys a Happy New Year, and stay safe, and we'll see it next year. So, for the Capital Games Podcast, I am The Wiz. Happy New Year.
Yep, a Happy New Year from me.
Who are you?
I would be Zero.
There you go. All right, guys. Happy New Year. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.